For this moth, I actually began by tapping around with my finger using a soft brush. I really liked the depth in the photo, how the background is really blurry and the moth is really sharp. I wanted to capture that effect in my painting, so I kept that in mind and only made the areas around the moth crisp, or areas that were pointing to him. I even used the sharpen adjustment a couple times to make sure that moth really stood out. Another thing I realized while painting this was you don't have to be completely literal with your brush choices. I actually used the crystal brush to paint the edges of these flowers, and I think it worked pretty nicely for it. This little guy was a challenge. He has such an expressive and cute smile, and being a portrait artist, it was strange to draw without thinking human. What helped me in this was leaning on my copying skills a little more. I looked at the little shapes of light and tried to put them in as best I could. When I stopped thinking about how I thought the dolphin should look and started focusing on what was actually right in front of me, that was when I was able to draw him more accurately. It's a simple little painting, but it was a good exercise for me. With more practice painting dolphins, I'll become better. And that's what's important to remember about anything you want to paint and become good at. Practice, practice, practice. With this painting, I went in with intention. I wanted to make a confident painting, to reflect the confidence of this very proud lion. I deliberately considered each stroke before I put it down, analyzing each different shape's color, size, and placement on the canvas. There are so many ways you can tackle a painting. I really enjoyed painting with this approach. I think it's important to realize that you don't need to copy every minute detail. You don't need to copy pixel for pixel. In fact, a simple statement with simple shapes will do well. Find the shapes of light and shade and place them in the proper place, and you'll have yourself a painting. I find that painting is as much what you put in as you leave out. As artists, we have the ability to omit. This lion doesn't need every little detail on his face in order for me to make him look like a lion. In fact, I think if I added all these details in his face, it would end up taking away from the picture as a whole. I like how this one is left simple in design. I'm allowing you as the viewers to do some of the work, and that's part of the fun of looking at art, I think. For this painting, I used my favorite 6B pencil, and mostly on its side. But I did up the streamlining of the brush. This helped me make confident, chiseled shapes. For this painting, I began with a line drawing instead of going right in with paint. I found there to be a beautiful, graceful poetry to her, so I wanted to embrace that by drawing with rhythmic lines. Since I let myself be more rhythmic and free, I wanted to go back and check my structure. So I took a closer look at proportions by painting her as two simple rectangular shapes. Then I visually compared the two rectangles to each other, and then also compared them to my drawing. I like to drop lines, compare distances, and make quick grids whenever I need to help me with proportional accuracy. She doesn't look exactly like the photo, and that doesn't bother me. What does matter to me, though, is that she looks like a deer, so checking measurements helps a lot with that. Instead of using a textured brush for her spots, I decided to draw them by hand. Sometimes a textured brush will work better, and sometimes drawing the details slowly by hand will work better. You can decide what will work best for your painting on a case-by-case basis. With this painting, I actually started off using the flat marker, making long strokes to make his body. I like to switch up the way I start, as you can see. I think every piece calls for a slightly different approach, so it's good to have a few techniques up your sleeve. Here's something new that I tried out. To get the texture on the branch, I just selected the area, and then I just stamped it with the burnt tree brush. And I think it worked. It was an easy way to get the look I wanted. As you can see, I ran into a glitch in the recording of this one. And I think it was because my iPad went into sleep mode once while I still had my drawing open. To prevent the problem from happening again, what I did was I went into my settings, display and brightness, auto lock, and I set it to never. And I haven't run into this recording problem since. This is just a little side note if you like to record your processes. But back to the painting. I think it's important to always be checking yourself. Compare measurements to one another. Test yourself and evaluate the distances and exact spaces between things. If you're going for a general likeness, big differences from the reference will make a big difference. So sometimes I like to take the time to make sure I've nailed down my proportions. To move things around in Procreate, what I do is I just make a copy of my drawing, and then I move things around with the selection tool and the transform tool. I went into this drawing with no real desire of making a painting that was accurate to the photo. But this little bird isn't paying me to paint his likeness anyway, so I didn't feel too bad about it. I did want to capture the nostalgic feeling I got from looking at it though. I wanted to paint a warm summer glow on this peaceful looking bird. I actually drew it with the selection tool to get a quick defined outline of the bird. For this painting, I used the soft pastel brush, the 6B sketching brush, and the soft brush for a nice warm orange glow. I also went to the adjustments and made a slight change to the hue and saturation here, just to get that final look I was going for.